Is it from a TV show or something? It sounded like it would make good theme music. definitely in. It's been stuck in my head all morning. Way to drive over the curb. Hi, Craig. I will be at the test lab at 1:10 p.m. speed limit bug. Return drive would be from
show ahead for you today. In the second hour, when Cenk Uygur joins us, we will be talking about what's currently developing and kind of blowing up all over the internet. If you haven't noticed, there's just this big rift among conservative media figures in regard to the Charlie Kirk assassination, whether or not questions should be asked, whether or not the FBI should be trusted. It's just a massive story that's kind of impossible to ignore, but since it's currently developing as we speak, we'll have that for you in the second hour, and we'll tell you all the details as we know them. Later, we'll also discuss the GOP healthcare proposal that's supposed to essentially compete against what Democrats want, which is an extension to the Affordable Care Act subsidies to keep premiums low. They haven't put a lot of thought behind it, to be honest with you, and we'll give you the details of that. At the top of the show, I'll give you the latest on what very clearly is shaping up to be a regime change operation. I don't know if it's going to become a war with Venezuela, but the Trump administration has escalated things considerably since the last time we've spoken about it. And so there's a lot to get to. So I don't want to waste any more time. Just want to encourage you to like and share the stream. If you're watching us live, Candace Owens is live right now, so you probably aren't. But if you are, do us a favor, help us in what the kids like to refer to as the algo, and help spread the message of TYT. You can also become a member by going to tyt.com/join. All right, let's talk about Venezuela.
But these are stone-cold murders. But every time we knock out a boat, we save 25,000 American lives.
So would you consider doing something similar with Mexico and Colombia that are even more responsible for fentanyl trafficking into the U.S.?
Sure, I would.
Well, the Trump administration has ratcheted up its one-sided war and seized an oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela. Great. Even though it was a sanctioned tanker, Bloomberg is reporting that our government is being dishonest. They're lying and telling us otherwise. The U.S. conducted a judicial enforcement action on a stateless vessel that was last docked in Venezuela, according to a senior Trump administration official.
Hey, Craig.
Hey, I just thought you on your way?
Yep, I am 5 minutes out.
All right. I'll see you then.
All right, see ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Already gone up as a result. Isn't that great? International oil prices moved higher on news of the seizure, with Brent crude climbing as much as 0.8% in London trading. Now, why would that happen? Well, because we're living in a global oil market, of course, where less global supply means prices are obviously going to go up. And the Trump administration's actions will make it harder for Venezuela to export its oil, especially since other oil shippers will now be more reluctant to load its cargo, according to Bloomberg. Now, George Leon, head of geopolitical analysis at Rystad Energy, told Bloomberg that, quote, the U.S. seizing a Venezuelan tanker is a clear escalation from financial sanctions to physical interdiction. It raises the stakes for Caracas and anyone facilitating its exports. This kind of action adds a geopolitical floor to prices. Even modest volumes can move sentiment when the risk is about sea lanes and state-to-state escalation. And keep in mind, this is all happening when we're already in an inflationary economic environment. So inflation is up again at 3%, at a time, by the way, when unemployment is also rising, which means that we are dealing with possible stagflation already. But nonetheless, the serious escalation comes on the heels of the United States military flying 2 fighter jets into the Gulf of Venezuela on Tuesday. So this is the closest that the U.S. military has gotten to the coast, and we're literally talking about a body of water that's surrounded by Venezuelan territory on 3 sides. But the military dishonestly told the Associated Press that it was just a routine training flight. In addition to the escalatory measures, President Trump continues to say that he is not willing to rule out a ground invasion in what is obviously a regime change war his administration is currently plotting. As we all know, Trump wants us to all believe that the war on Venezuela is about protecting Americans from narco traffickers, which is an amazing lie, because during a recent interview with Politico, Well, Trump was asked why he decided to pardon the former Honduran president who trafficked tons of cocaine into the United States. Take a look.
You pardoned former Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez and let him out of prison, even though he was convicted in a massive international drug trafficking scheme. How is that zero tolerance on drug trafficking?
Well, I don't know him, and I know very little about him, other than people said it was like a Obama-Biden type setup, where he was set up. He was the president of the country. The country deals in drugs like probably you could say that about every country. And because he was the president, they gave him like 45 years in prison. And there are many people fighting for Honduras, very good people that I know, and they think he was treated horribly. And they asked me to do it, and I said, I'll do it.
You can say that about every country's engaging in drug trafficking, but Venezuela is the one country that Trump has decided to target because they're the narco terrorists. And look, if we're to take what Trump is saying at face value, that means that people in his administration basically manipulate him by saying that an actual narco trafficker was treated unfairly by Trump's political opponents. And he makes pardoning decisions without even bothering to probe into the very people he's looking to pardon. Like, isn't that insane? But also, what the hell could possibly be more unfair than slaughtering fishing boats full of people simply based on a suspicion that they're narco traffickers? Hernandez was sentenced to 45 years in prison for good reason. And for all the people who have bought into the ridiculous fear-mongering about how Venezuela's role in the cocaine drug trade is worth slaughtering innocent people, keep this in mind. Prosecutors maintain that Hernandez's government set up Honduras to serve as a pivotal waypoint or superhighway of cocaine coming from South American nations, including Colombia and Venezuela. And by the way, just pause for a second. When I say fishing boats full of innocent people, I actually believe in what our judicial system maintains, that people are innocent until proven guilty. Those fishing boats were full of people who never had a minute, who never had an opportunity to make a case. There was no due process. There was no evidence presented whatsoever. Some of the survivors of those Venezuelan fishing boat strikes were allowed to just go back to their country with no problem. If they're such dangerous narco terrorists, why would the Trump administration just willy-nilly let them go back to their own countries? Now, Hernandez also accepted $1 million from former Mexican cartel kingpin El Chapo in 2013 while successfully running for his first Honduran presidential term. It turns out he was using money from the drug trade to accumulate power, political power for himself. Now, he was found guilty following a 3-week trial, meaning there was due process in that case. But according to Trump, he was treated unfairly by Joe Biden? Right. Here's more from Trump.
Do you think that could send the wrong message to drug
I don't
dealers?
think so. Look, I think, when you weaponize government, they've weaponized their government just like they did over here. I'm one of the people that survived, but they weaponized the government. We had the most weaponized government. Our election was rigged. They went after me. I was impeached twice. I was indicted. They indicted me. I came out good. Here we are in the White House. Things are looking nice.
It is a problem when the country is led by an incurious bozo who's easily manipulated by people who exploit his unending grievances to get what they want. And that's if we take Trump's reasoning for pardoning Juan Orlando Hernandez at face value. But there likely are other reasons for why Trump made that decision. Now, Trump has issued more than 2,000 pardons since taking office for his... fundraiser for Trump that promised face-to-face access with the president. Weird. That's so weird, because when it came to Hunter Biden, I thought his tax crimes were worthy of like life in prison. Anyway, let's get back to the guy that Trump pardoned, though. The curiously timed pardon spared Paul Walzak from having to pay nearly $4.4 million in restitution and from reporting to prison for an 18-month sentence that had been handed down just 12 days earlier. But there are other examples I can give you, like the CEO of the failed EV truck company Nikola, a Utah billionaire named Trevor Milton, who received a full pardon after being convicted for defrauding investors. It was surely just a coincidence that Trevor Milton and his wife gave almost $1 million each to a Trump-backing super PAC less than a month before the 2024 election. I think there would be a little more respect toward our institutions and our government if we were led by people who stopped lying to us, who stopped being as dishonest as the Trump administration is being in regard to their reasonings and their motives for why they are edging closer and closer to a hot war with Venezuela. You can have issues with how Venezuela is governed. I certainly do. You can dislike the Venezuelan regime, which I certainly have issues with. But the idea that our soldiers should engage in a costly war with Venezuela because our national security is threatened by their narco-terrorists is laughable. It's just not true. And the reason why you just heard, Dasha from Politico ask Donald Trump, well, the fentanyl's coming from China and Mexico. Are you considering taking any action against that? Is because that's where the real issue is rooted in, right? Like that's where the fentanyl is coming from. It's coming from China. It's smuggled through from Mexico. And the fentanyl is what is leading to the massive number of overdose deaths in this country. Now, I don't want war with Mexico either. But my point here is to say that he is trying to drag the United States into a war under a false premise. And we've been here, we've done that before. And let's just be a little bit smarter. Let's actually push back for once instead of beating the war drums because our precious government decided to lie to us again about their motivations. I think this is really about oil, and I think that it's for ideological purposes as well. Trump wants regime change in Venezuela. Marco Rubio certainly wants regime change in Venezuela. And more importantly, a powerful group of voters in South Florida who people like Marco Rubio certainly want to appeal to, possibly for a future presidential run, have a lot more sway than they should have. I'm sorry to all the Cubans and Venezuelans in South Florida. My husband's Cuban, my in-laws are Cuban, and I love them to death. Okay, Americans shouldn't have to pay for or risk their lives for your pet project. You got issues with a foreign country? That's on you. You're an American. Either you start seeing yourself as an American who prioritizes this country, or maybe consider a different country. And I'm being serious about that. We are $38 trillion in debt. The idea that we're going to start a new war with freaking Venezuela under false pretenses because there's a community of people in South Florida who really don't like him in Cuba is insane. But here we are. That's what we're dealing with. By the way, does that mean that I'm anti-Cuban now because I don't want to go to war with Venezuela and I'm being critical about our government's actions toward Venezuela? No. And maybe the Israelis should keep that in mind.